But the biggest threat to Carlos's reign as the #1 player isn't other players. According to coach Patrick Mouratoglou, Carlos's biggest enemy is boredom. He suspects that Carlos isn't that interested, and he says that could spell some trouble.
Only days prior, the tennis world was stunned by a disclosure from insider sources. Juan Carlos Ferreiro, in an interview with Clay, publicly asserted that Carlos Alcaraz's greatest obstacle to becoming the sport's all-time greatest player was a potential loss of motivation.
Of all time is losing motivation.
Para un sitio y los otros pues tiran para el otro. Ha habido ciertos temas que no hemos estado.
This same individual had spent 7 formative years immersed in Alcaraz's psyche, intimately understanding his every vulnerability and trigger. Astoundingly, the moment his coaching relationship concluded, he began to speak out. Consider the gravity of this. The mentor who sculpted Alcaraz from a raw 15-year-old into the youngest player to achieve a career Grand Slam, a coach unceremoniously dismissed with a mere 48-hour contract deadline, is now openly dissecting the perceived weaknesses in his former protégé's mental fortitude.
Player's armor.
A nivel de contratos, habían ciertas cosas que no estábamos viendo para un sitio y los otros pues tiran para el otro. Ha habido
This wasn't a private whisper or a quiet aside. It was a public declaration to the media. Such actions transcend mere disloyalty, hinting at a far more complex undercurrent. As one delves deeper into this unfolding drama, a troubling question persistently arises. Was Ferreiro truly fostering Alcaraz's ascension over those years, or was he subtly positioning himself as the one person capable of engineering his downfall? Tennis experts are now prepared to reveal precisely why the answer to this query is more unsettling than anyone might anticipate. Alcaraz's most formidable rival was never Jannik Sinner, nor Novak Djokovic, but rather the man who once stood steadfastly in his corner. If this narrative resonates with you in an unexpected way, ensure you hit that subscribe button, as this channel fearlessly explores territories shunned by mainstream tennis media. Stay engaged, for what follows promises to completely alter your perception of this once celebrated partnership. Over 7 years, their collaboration yielded 6 Grand Slams, 24 titles, an unprecedented world no. 1 ranking at the youngest age, and the distinction of the youngest male to complete the career Grand Slam. By all conventional metrics, Juan Carlos Ferreiro and Carlos Alcaraz forged a dominant legacy in tennis, unmatched in its pace, youthful achievement, and sheer command. So why does the unraveling of this story feel akin to a forensic investigation? Because beneath the glittering trophies, highlight reels, and curated social media posts, a relationship had been quietly fracturing for years, though the fissures weren't evident where most observers looked. Initial focus centered on the contract disputes, the abrupt 48-hour ultimatum, and the clauses Ferreiro declined to sign. However, these were merely the culminating events. The true damage began much earlier, rooted in something far more fundamental than financial terms. It was a struggle for control. Ferreiro was more than a conventional coach. He himself was a former world no. 1, triumphing at the 2003 French Open and operating his own esteemed academy in Valencia. His profound understanding of elite tennis endowed him with very precise philosophies on sustaining peak performance, rigorous discipline, unwavering structure, absolute commitment, and 0 distractions. When he commenced working with a 15-year-old Alcaraz in 2018, this framework was entirely logical. The young athlete was unpolished, prone to emotional swings on court. Ferreiro himself characterized the nascent Alcaraz as a roller coaster, elated after victories, shattered by defeats. He crucially needed the stabilizing influence that Ferreiro provided, a dynamic that proved exceptionally successful for the initial years. Then Alcaraz began his meteoric ascent, achieving the world no. 1 ranking at just 19 years old fundamentally alters the player-coach dynamic, which is inherently fluid. When a player claims Grand Slams, transcends into a global phenomenon, and attracts a deluge of sponsorships, endorsements, and even Netflix documentaries, the balance of power inevitably shifts. And Ferreiro, despite his undeniable coaching prowess, found navigating this new paradigm challenging. The Netflix documentary Carlos Alcaraz, My Way, released in April 2025, offered the public its first real-time glimpse into these burgeoning tensions. The focal point was a discussion between Alcaraz and Ferreiro regarding his career trajectory. Both Ferreiro and Alcaraz's agent Albert Molina expressed palpable discomfort over the extensive time Alcaraz spent away from the sport, Ibiza getaways, social engagements, Formula One races. They framed these diversions as direct threats to his Grand Slam aspirations. Alcaraz, though not confrontational, firmly asserted his intention to pursue his career on his own terms. Ferreiro's public response was measured. He appeared on Spanish radio defending Alcaraz's work ethic by stating he valued 2 hours of quality training over 4 hours of poor attitude and affirming Alcaraz's consistent dedication when required. While a show of public loyalty, the documentary had privately unveiled a truth that could not be unsaid. Ferreiro admitted on camera that upon his initial assessment of Alcaraz's personality and life philosophy, he doubted the teenager possessed the long-term fortitude to reach the pinnacle of the sport.
Become the best in the long term.
Que elegir quién quiere ser.
Indeed, his exact articulation was that given how Alcaraz is, he initially believed the young player wouldn't achieve supreme status, though he quickly appended that Alcaraz was proving him incorrect. Yet this softening qualification fails to erase the profound implications of the original declaration. Consider the weight of this for a moment. The very mentor, the figure you consider a second father, whose counsel guides you daily, harbored private doubts about your ultimate potential for greatness. This was uttered aloud, broadcast in a Netflix documentary to millions, with Alcaraz himself present during the editing, fully aware the line would remain. This is far from a minor detail. It represents a fundamental breach in the psychological covenant between a coach and an elite athlete. And this wasn't an isolated comment. A discernible pattern began to emerge. The 2024 U.S. Open served as a critical juncture. Alcaraz suffered a shocking second-round defeat, an unexpectedly early exit for a player of his standing. Ferreiro's camp advocated for pushing forward, maintaining focus, and intensified training. Alcaraz's immediate response, however, was to attend a Formula One event. Ferreiro was reportedly opposed to this decision, yet his disapproval carried no decisive weight. This moment proved crucial, as it starkly illuminated where the actual power resided within their relationship. Alcaraz was the financier, Alcaraz was the performer on court, and Alcaraz's name adorned every trophy. When it came to decisions about his personal downtime following a grueling tournament defeat, he made the executive call himself. Ferreiro's opinion was heard, then respectfully disregarded. The narrative then shifts to Cincinnati in 2025. Alcaraz reached a high-stakes final against his chief rival, Jannik Sinner, one of the season's most anticipated matchups. Conspicuously, Ferreiro was absent, reportedly watching a football match between Elche and Betis concurrently. Sources close to Alcaraz's inner circle were reportedly deeply displeased by this. Here was the world no. One competing in a Masters 1000 final against his greatest adversary, while his 7-year coach was observed in the stands of a football stadium. Some defended Ferreiro's absence, citing that Samuel Lopez, his long-term associate from the Equalite Academy, had been fully integrated into the coaching staff since December 2024 and was shouldering more day-to-day responsibilities. The counter-argument remains simple. When you coach the world number one, you attend the finals. The issue of the training base presented another slow-burning point of friction that never fully resolved. Ferreiro's academy was situated in Valina, whereas Alcaraz had spent his formative years training at the Carlos Alcaraz Tennis Academy in El Palmar, Murcia, a facility managed by his father, Carlos Alcaraz SR, for over 3 decades. The journey between these two locations was approximately an hour, a seemingly trivial detail that nonetheless matters significantly at the elite level. Alcaraz grew increasingly reluctant to undertake this commute. His family was actively developing infrastructure in Murcia. A fully customized indoor court was reportedly constructed for him there without Ferreiro's prior knowledge. When Ferreiro arrived to prepare for the indoor season and discovered it, he was reportedly taken aback. This indoor court was more than just a tennis facility. It was a clear signal. The Alcaraz family, particularly his father, had steadily increased their influence in the management of his career over the years. Sources have confirmed substantial disagreements between Ferreiro and Carlos Alcaraz SR concerning the direction of the player's career, with these disputes allegedly dating back to at least February 2023, when Ferreiro announced he would not join the South American tour, delegating that responsibility to former coach Antonio Martinez Cascales. This decision led to a heated argument between Ferreiro and the elder Alcaraz, leaving a rift that never truly mended. Former Brazilian player Fernando Meligni, who competed alongside Ferreiro and knew him personally, encapsulated the underlying truth of the situation with a single phrase. He declared the ultimate victor in this entire saga was my way. The title of the Netflix documentary was, in retrospect, no accident. It served as a powerful declaration. Alcaraz was unequivocally communicating to Ferreiro, his team, his family, the wider tennis community, and the media precisely how he intended to govern his career. And Ferreiro, the staunch disciplinarian, famously described by one journalist as possessing Scandinavian sobriety, was fundamentally unsuited for my way. By the close of the 2025 season, Alcaraz had compiled one of the most stellar individual seasons in modern men's tennis history, securing 8 titles, including the French Open, US Open, Monte Carlo Masters, Italian Open, Cincinnati Open, ABN AMRO Open, Queen's Club Championships, and the Japan Open. He concluded the year as the world no. 1. Ferreiro was fittingly named ATP Coach of the Year, sharing the honor with Samuel Lopez. By all outward appearances, the partnership had reached its zenith, and then in a mere 48 hours, it imploded. The contract Ferreiro received in mid-December 2025 was far from a generous acknowledgement of his immense contributions. It included a substantial salary reduction and non-sporting clauses he deemed unacceptable. It arrived weeks after the previous contract's expiration, reportedly not dispatched until December 13th, long past the November end date. He was given until Monday morning to either accept or reject it, with no opportunity for negotiation or counteroffer, a mere 2 days to determine the fate of a 7-year professional relationship. Ferreiro rejected it. When he finally spoke publicly to Marca in late December 2025, his remarks were carefully chosen yet unequivocally clear. He stated that everything had seemed poised for continuation, confirmed the issues were not financial, and clarified there were certain stipulations he simply could not accept, given his personal principles. Then came the 6 words that underscored his entire statement: "I wish I could have continued." This is not the language of someone who willingly chose to depart. It is the lament of an individual who was effectively ousted but felt unable to state it directly.
This is every move. Who knows better than almost anyone alive what makes this player tick?
A nivel de contratos, habían ciertas cosas que no estábamos de acuerdo y los otros pues tiran para el otro. Ha habido
Tony Nadal, who devoted over 2 decades to coaching Rafael Nadal and possesses an unparalleled understanding of the player-coach dynamic, was resolute on one point. He asserted it was inconceivable that Ferreiro was dismissed without Alcaraz's explicit knowledge and approval. He was equally clear, however, that Alcaraz himself was not the initiator. The decision, Nadal contended, originated from Alcaraz's environment, his inner circle, his family, the individuals entrusted with managing his brand and future. Alcaraz was indeed aware and gave his assent, but the driving force emanated from his surroundings, not from the player himself. This distinction carries significant weight, rendering the narrative more intricate rather than simplifying it. If Alcaraz had personally terminated Ferreiro, it would present a straightforward story of a coach moving on, a common occurrence in professional sports. However, if Alcaraz permitted those around him to compel the departure of the man he referred to as his second father, a man denied a fair contract timeline, negotiation space, or proper consultation before the final decision, then the question of who genuinely controls Carlos Alcaraz becomes acutely uncomfortable. The post-split behavior only exacerbated the situation. Alcaraz posted a year-end Instagram recap titled My Real 2025, featuring 20 photos celebrating major victories, family, friends, and tennis legends like Marc Marquez, Roger Federer, and Rod Laver. Conspicuously absent was a single image of Juan Carlos Ferreiro, the individual instrumental in securing every single trophy showcased in that montage. Fans immediately noticed, and Tony Nadal publicly expressed his discomfort, stating that 7 years of dedicated work should not be so easily overlooked. Then came Melbourne. Alcaraz arrived at the Australian Open under the heaviest cloud of doubt he had faced since turning professional. A significant portion of the tennis media opined that without Ferreiro, he would undoubtedly struggle, especially having never advanced beyond the quarterfinals in Melbourne. The confluence of the coaching split, preseason disruptions, and the immense psychological pressure of pursuing the career Grand Slam made it the most scrutinized tournament of his young career. Yet he overcame Djokovic in the final, dropping the first set but winning the next 3 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5, achieving the career Grand Slam as the youngest man in history, a historic feat by any measure. 3 times during the post-match celebrations, journalists or presenters attempted to steer the conversation toward Ferreiro. 3 times, Alcaraz deftly evaded the topic, instead praising his team, acknowledging his doubters, and thanking those in his immediate corner. Ferreiro's name never once crossed his lips. Ferreiro, observing from a distance, responded with remarkable grace. He stated he was not bothered by Alcaraz's omission, understanding that the inner circle had collectively decided against further public commentary on the split. His academy issued a congratulatory message, he sent a private message, and he maintained his dignity throughout. However, 5 days before this video, he was once again before a microphone, and his statements were anything but neutral. He publicly declared that the only barrier separating Alcaraz from the most illustrious tennis career in history was a decline in motivation. He emphasized discipline, cautioned against the perils of achieving goals too early, framing his remarks as concern. Perhaps it was genuine concern, or perhaps a man who meticulously observed Alcaraz's every move for 7 years, understanding better than almost anyone alive what fuels this player and what might break him, was sending a very deliberate message to a very specific audience. Indeed, what might make him falter was the subtext of a targeted message. What mainstream tennis discourse consistently overlooks is that Ferreiro isn't just a former coach making sporadic media appearances. Since their separation in December 2025, he has maintained an almost constant presence in the media landscape, offering an interview, an insight, a warning, or a reflection every 2 weeks. He notably unfollowed Alcaraz on Instagram after the Australian Open triumph and has since pivoted to coaching a golfer. Yet he publicly confessed to still thinking about Alcaraz daily, claiming his heart is still over there. A person who relentlessly discusses someone they assert they've moved on from has, in fact, not moved on. This does not, however, cast Ferreiro as a villain. Such a label would be simplistic and inaccurate. He is evidently still grappling with a profound emotional loss. He co-created something extraordinary with this young talent, dedicating 7 years of his life to a project that cultivated a generational tennis prodigy. Being abruptly dismissed with a 48-hour contract immediately following the pinnacle season of their shared career would undeniably leave an indelible mark on anyone. Nevertheless, the ramifications of this ongoing situation on Alcaraz warrant a more rigorous examination. Presently, in April 2026, Alcaraz is competing for another title at Monte Carlo. He boasts 7 Grand Slams and 26 ATP titles, holding the world No. 1 ranking. While his former coach, the individual constantly amplified by the tennis media, is publicly outlining the precise psychological vulnerabilities that could lead to his collapse. This represents an exceptionally unusual dynamic. When Andre Agassi parted ways with Brad Gilbert, Gilbert did not spend 4 months publicly dissecting Agassi's motivational fragility. When Rafael Nadal's professional chapter with Tony Nadal concluded, it was marked by mutual respect and a clean, unambiguous farewell, allowing the media cycle to naturally progress. This situation has not moved on primarily because Ferreiro continues to fuel it. Whether this is intentional or simply the manifestation of a man struggling to relinquish control is known only to Ferreiro himself. Yet the impact on Alcaraz's public narrative is undeniably palpable. Each time Ferreiro articulates concerns about motivation or issues warnings about discipline, the discourse irrevocably shifts away from Alcaraz's formidable achievements and towards what he might potentially lose. A 22-year-old aiming to surpass Djokovic's record of 24 Grand Slams should not, 4 months post-split, still have his psychological vulnerabilities publicly diagnosed by his former coach. This is precisely what experts are finally beginning to articulate. Not that Ferreiro was incompetent, nor that the partnership was a failure. The overwhelming statistics refute both arguments. Rather, they contend that the very nature of this split and the subsequent behavior has unveiled aspects of the Ferreiro-Alcaraz dynamic that were always present but never fully transparent to external observers. The element of control was genuine. The underlying doubt was real. The power struggle between Ferreiro and the Alcaraz family was a tangible force, and the abrupt, cold, and conclusive manner of its termination suggests that by December 2025, Alcaraz's inner circle had already definitively answered a question they had been contemplating for at least a year. Was Juan Carlos Ferreiro still an invaluable asset, or had he transformed into something else entirely? The career Grand Slam now resides in his trophy cabinet. With 7 majors secured by age 22 and the record books are being rewritten in real time. Yet the man who guided him through 6 of those 7 titles is now coaching a golfer and publicly cautioning the tennis world about motivation. Interpret this as you will. But if you have closely tracked Alcaraz's career, observing the tightening of his family circle, the quiet relocation of his training base, and the deliberate structuring of the contract to force a resolution rather than invite dialogue, then the title of this video ceases to sound like a mere provocation. Instead, it begins to resonate as a profound diagnosis. If this dissection has offered you a perspective unavailable elsewhere, subscribe to this channel immediately. We approach tennis coverage differently, delving into the intricate details, hidden dynamics, and untold stories that official tennis media cycles often neglect to thoroughly examine. Hit the subscribe button, enable notifications, and stay with us, because the 2026 clay season is only just beginning, and the Alcaraz narrative is far from its conclusion.